The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
Welcome, Giles and the Goalie Podcast. My name is Giles Farrell. Across the internet machine is Ben Remington.
Hello.
Ben, did you enjoy the high school tournament this weekend?
I actually wasn't able to watch any of it, unfortunately. I was in the fine city of Seattle for the week, and then I promptly drove. Well, when I got home, I promptly drove to the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin and drank all weekend.
Well, that's pretty much what you would expect to do when you go into Wisconsin, is drink till your heart's content. So,
right,
it's not like they have anything else for you to do.
Yeah, pretty much. No, so and that's what we did, as was noticed on the recap to Friday night's game.
That was a solid recap. That Tom and Jerry shirt is top notch.
It really is. It's one of my favorite shirts.
I love Tom and Jerry. One of my favorite cartoons as a kid.
It's just outstanding.
Before we dive into our otherwise fine show we have planned for you here, a few promos for you. First of which is, if you are new to this show, check us out on SoundCloud. Search Giles and the Goalie. If you like to listen to your podcast on iTunes, check us out there. Search Giles and the Goalie. Subscribe, leave us a rating. And then we also have a YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, search Giles and the Goalie. You can find those lovely game previews and game recaps, and then some other odds and ends things that we haven't really figured out yet, but we'll figure it out someday.
We're going to come out with that buddy cop movie any day now.
Yep.
The one where we find Paul Kariya's stolen championship ring.
Yeah, what a clown. Who would do that?
Yeah.
I was about ready to get on the next flight to Toronto and find this guy.
Right, exactly.
The other promo we have is we have a watch party planned for the March 31st game as the Wild are in Dallas. That is a Saturday night at 7 p.m. And our lovely friends over at Tin Whiskers Brewery in St. Paul are going to host us once again. So that is Saturday, March 31st, Wild at the Dallas Stars. So plan accordingly to drink an extra beer or two because the Wild are on the road. But we would love to see everyone come on out, so do plan for that because we like to see all three listeners.
Right.
Otherwise, it'll just be me and Jamie and you and Ross, which isn't terrible.
We have done worse things before.
Yeah. I'll be sure to toss a tarp over my computer this time if it's just the four of us again.
We need it on its own separate table.
That joke didn't land well. I just got the finger.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I understand.
Speaking of, the last episode we went over my favorite things of Iowa list. And I would like to just add to that best Taco John's in the country in Marshalltown, Iowa. I did have that this week, and I must say it is pretty darn good.
Okay.
So, if you do Google that, best Taco John's in the USA, it does drive you to that particular Taco John's.
Like this is according to Yelp reviews or what?
Just Google. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. I think Google feeds off of Yelp reviews, or maybe it's just Google Maps reviews, I guess. I don't know.
I'm just passing along pertinent information.
Okay. Well, that's fair. It's good information. If people find out nothing from us besides where to get the best tacos, I think we've done our job.
Yep. That and come drink beer with us. So
that too.
We've done our job, and that'll wrap it up for this week. I'm just kidding. On to the Minnesota Wild. They had 3 games here in the last week, and one of which came at home. Ben, did you know the Minnesota Wild are a good team at home?
I've heard they're a good team at home.
That came on Tuesday. The Minnesota Wild played the Carolina Hurricanes, and the score doesn't quite do justice to this. Wild wins 6-2 over the Hurricanes. Eric Staal had a pair of goals. Zach Parise, the good hockey boy Nino Niederreiter, Daniel Winnick, and the oldest player in the NHL, Matt Cullen, all getting in on the action on what can be described as just a good old butt kicking from the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, that game could have very easily been 10-2.
Yeah, it really could have. But the tire fire that continues to be the Carolina Hurricanes goaltending was on in full display on Tuesday. The Wild kicked the Carolina Hurricanes' butt so bad they bumped general manager Ron Francis even further upstairs away from hockey operations decisions, literally the next day.
So when you get, quote-unquote, whatever he got, promoted, reassigned from GM to president, like, what decisions are you making, or hockey operations, what decisions are you making at that point? Like,
nothing.
Concession prices, or... Yep.
Basically how I took that is, especially in that situation, is Ron Francis is just still on the payroll. He has a job, but it's basically, you can look for another job and we'll continue to pay you till we do so, but you are no longer making hockey decisions.
Maybe they're letting him design their 3rd jersey.
Doubt it.
That should be a job that someone has.
I think their new owner's just going to make it the Hartford Whalers jersey, let's be honest, because he's trying to milk as much money out of that as he can.
He's going to make the Whalers logo in black and red just to be even more sacrilegious.
Oh, God. But seriously, what a sweet gig that is. Like, you literally get fired from your job, but not fired, where you just get, quote-unquote, promoted to a higher position in the organization, but you have the freedom to look for another job while still getting paid.
I've actually not been in that situation, obviously. I've seen other people in, I want to say, similar type situations professionally, where they're like, yeah, they really sucked at this job, but instead of firing them, they moved them to like a more cushy, easier job where they make more money, but it's just less responsibility kind of thing. I don't know. I'm not utterly shocked by it because I know it does happen in the actual professional world too.
Yeah. So moving along, the Wild had a couple of days off in between games, which was kind of nice. But then they had back-to-back games in Western Canada, Friday and Saturday, the first of which came in Vancouver, as we all yearn for the flying skates, as we discussed last week. The Minnesota Wild go into General Motors Place and win 5-2 over the Canucks. Once again, Zach Parise, Eric Staal, Matt Cullen get on the score sheet. The Big Omelet, Charlie Coyle, and Marcus Foligno adding the insurance goals at the end there. That was a game in which the Wild kind of toyed with us. It looked like they were letting Vancouver hang around, but they got the job done.
Yeah, I was watching that game while drinking some fine Minnesota beers in my Wisconsin hotel room, and I felt like they, something that I should have said in my wordless recap, but for a road game, I thought they looked pretty good, and I mean that's a pretty low bar to clear right now, I realize, but I thought they looked pretty good. I thought they had decent amount of pressure. That's a game where I think Anders Nilsson had a pretty decent game actually, and he certainly had that huge save on Cullen beside the net. So it could have been even worse for the Canucks, and I think that I was somewhat impressed by how they played.
The Brock Besser-less Vancouver Canucks in that game is he suffered a nasty back injury this week. Ben, did you know Brock Besser was drafted after the Minnesota Wild selected Joel Eriksson?
But who's still playing, suckers?
Yeah, that'll teach him all 3 goals.
Yep, suck it. And that back injury, that's going to linger. Bad pick.
God. I think what makes that worse is, like, as great as watching Brock Besser is and, like, how terrible it was to see him, kind of lose out on the Calder Trophy race, was that it was Cal Clutterbuck who delivered that hit.
Oh, God. I didn't know that. That does make it suck way more.
What stinks was, like, Besser was trying to hit Clutterbuck, and then he just bounced right off Clutterbuck because he's just a truck.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just went right into the bench door.
I think it's a general rule in life just to avoid Cal Clutterbuck.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have any hot takes on the bench door being open during play? Because that kind of became a hot discussion the next day.
I think people think, there has been a handful of injuries here and there caused by that. But, you really want everyone jumping over the boards back and forth? Like, that seems like it's not super safe either. Granted, hockey players are pretty good at it. They've got it down to a science. We've been doing it our whole lives. But, I don't know. I don't think that, like, injuries during shift changes are going to completely evaporate if you just don't open the bench door like that. I don't know.
I think it was Friedman who mentioned in his 31 Thoughts. It said, yeah, like the bench door, there's some merit to that argument. But the thing of it is if you keep the bench door closed at all times, then you've got skates flying up in the air during play, which is just as equally, if not more dangerous. So
right.
It's a no-win situation. So I'm just like, just leave it as is. And it's unfortunately just a part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
As bad as that is, when you start talking about skates in people's faces, we don't need that. We don't need another Richard Zednick skate in the neck incident.
Right. Well, and so Besser got hurt on the door, but when was the last time someone else did? Are we going all the way back to Havlat on this, or?
It's been a while. I think.
Right.
There's more injuries just from where the bench ends, and there's that middle glass separating the two benches, and players just get knocked into that. I think there's more injuries from that, but
yeah,
I don't know. You don't see a whole lot of bench injuries, but
no,
whatever. Anyway, Wild close out the week in Edmonton at one of the arenas or stadiums that has Rogers in the name. Lord knows which one it is, but Wild lose in Edmonton 4-1. Connor McDavid, very good, as I noted on the post-game recap. Yeah. And Leon Draisaitl added a goal. The Wild had historically done a pretty good job of containing Connor McDavid, but they did not do that on Saturday night. Not one bit.
Yeah, I didn't catch any of this game, unfortunately, being out of town, but it sounds like McDavid just kind of had his way with the team, and yeah, that is odd because they have done a really good job of containing him. So I don't know. I guess it sounded like otherwise they didn't play terribly. They didn't play well enough to win, but they didn't completely crap the bed like we're accustomed to seeing on the road. So
yeah, and
I think there's some positives there.
The first period, the Wild, had a pretty good pace of play, and they just couldn't beat Cam Talbot, and it just turned into one of those things where, of course, halfway through the game, they hadn't scored, and Connor McDavid took over. So it's like, yep, this is kind of an on-brand thing for the Wild, where you're, pushing the play for 30 minutes, and then, boom, you're roasted in the next 3 minutes.
Right.
I'm not concerned, and I guess this can kind of segue into one of the topics I had written down, because after the game, it was written by Russo that the Wild's older guys were gassed in this second game of a back-to-back. They've got 3 more left this season, and it is concerning, but should we be that concerned about this when there won't be any in the playoffs?
I don't think so. And they have, 3 more back-to-backs left?
Yep.
So, yeah, if you toss out that they lose those 3 games, I'm not super concerned with 3 losses right now from this team. I think they can survive that and make the playoffs. And then, yeah, as you said, in the playoffs, they are not going to have one. So, I don't know. It's fine. I mean, is it maybe a symptom of having an older team? Maybe, but I still don't think it's, like, super concerning.
And in the playoffs, you're getting, especially in, like, the first round, you're getting, at least one, if not in a lot of cases, 2 days off between games with the horrific schedule that gets put out. And
I know.
And I'd argue that is actually going to benefit the Wild. As bad as the schedule is, having all those days off in between games will play into their favor. And, especially for those 30-something guys who, they need the rest. And Bruce Boudreau said this last week, rest is a powerful ally for us right now. So that will definitely be the case in the postseason. And as I reminded everyone on the post-game recap for the Oilers game, this is ultimately where the team is going to be judged. Like, for all I care, about the regular season, we're going to judge this team solely on the playoffs, and that's what we said going into the season. So I don't understand why we're so quick to throw the panic button on something that's going to be completely irrelevant in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's some kind of litmus test where, the playoffs are a grind, and I think that there's something to that, but, it's not like it's something that they're going to deal with if it's a very specific issue. It's not like you can say, oh, they look worn down in general, because they don't. Like, on games where they've had a day off, they look fine. You don't see, dead legs on a Thursday when they played on a Tuesday. So I don't know that that's an issue for this team.
All right. And as we record here on Sunday, late Sunday afternoon, Minnesota Wild sit third in the Central Division, 6 points behind Winnipeg, and the Jets have a game in hand. And they are 3 points up on the Dallas Stars for the first wild card spot, Dallas with a game in hand. And they are 5 points clear of the Colorado Avalanche for the last wild card spot. The Avs do have a game in hand. So it's looking more and more like Minnesota and Winnipeg are going to be playing in the first round unless the Dallas Stars really catch fire here. And the Wild kind of have a tail off, which is entirely possible with their more road-heavy schedule to end the year, but I just don't see it. I just think the Jets and the Wild are going to play in round one at this point.
Sure.
Other news here in the past week, after we recorded last Sunday during the end of the Wild Red Wings game, was revealed the next day that Luke Kunin, who left the game in the third period, ended up tearing his ACL and is not likely to be back on the ice until at least training camp next fall.
Right.
Not great when, last week we were kind of debating if that was the right time to recall Luke Kunin, and, the Wild had traded some guys off the books to make sure that, they were able to bring him up from Iowa, especially for this schedule to end the season with all these back-to-backs, and then, boom, he goes down. And as our injury guy in zone coverage, Lucas, put up a piece on the ACL injury, and there's a study done by the University of Minnesota where hockey players who tear their ACL, they come back and there's a rather significant decrease in production and expected games play. So you just hope that is not the case for Luke Kunin, that he can still have a pretty prosperous career. But man, what a bad time for injury like that. I guess there's not really a good time for that, but
right.
Yikes, 2 games after you get recalled.
Yeah, and I think, if there was a good time for it, maybe this is it. Because he's still very young, so I'm not as worried about his future production taking a hit. And, the team doesn't really need him right now. Like, he was very much a luxury to this team, and I would have loved to have him on the team, but it's not like he's our second-line center and has been all season, Like, that would have been a much bigger blow to this team. Say like what we think he's going to be in 3 years or so. Like that's a different deal. So yeah, it's really unfortunate, and it really kind of that was going to be their quote unquote deadline acquisition. So now you kind of have to wonder, like, you just hope that they are able to sign Jordan Greenway and call him straight up. I don't know, like that seems like something you could do. I don't know if they're they obviously don't want to bring Sam Annis up that badly, otherwise they probably would have already. It'll be very interesting to see what they do with this roster the rest of the season without having Kunin there, because he was very obviously a guy they wanted to have for the stretch run.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is playing into a part of it, but the Wild have kind of gone with just 12 forwards now here this week.
Yeah.
And they really didn't seem to have a pressing need to call somebody up. And, then you had Nick Seeler, who was out with some injuries this week. And, I just wonder if they don't maybe want to call up any more people from Iowa unless they absolutely have to, because Iowa's in a playoff position and maybe they don't want to just deconstruct that roster in the middle of a playoff chase.
And they probably don't need to be honest. Like I said, they don't really need to vulture away from Iowa. I mean, what good is it to have Annis up if you're just going to throw him in the press box? Right. And maybe you do want to leave him in Iowa and let that team actually experience some success for once.
You mentioned Jordan Greenway. Boston University had a good weekend here where they swept Connecticut, and now they'll be playing Boston College and what I believe is the Hockey East tournament in Boston next weekend. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly the Wild can get Greenway as soon as Boston College loses in the Hockey East tournament. I got too many college tournaments floating through my head right now.
'Tis the season.
But, yeah, no kidding. We'll get to that later.
Mm-hmm.
And also the same for Louis Belpedio, who I messaged you the other day. I was like, have we had any news on him? Because, Miami is playing St. Cloud State, the number 1 team in college this weekend, and they were likely to get swept, but they actually won a game Saturday night, so it's 1-1 here as we record going into Sunday night's decisive Game 3, but you got to figure St. Cloud wins and Miami's season is done because there's no chance they're getting in the NCAA tournament, so
right.
Just not knowing what's going to happen with Belpedio, who is a right-shot defenseman, is kind of terrifying.
Yeah. Well, especially because he could be a college free agent, I believe, after June 1st, I think is the deadline. So the Wild do have to sign him to keep him under their control. I don't know. We haven't talked to the great Nate Wells about this. He might have a little more light on the subject. Yeah.
It would have been nice to chat with him this week at the high school tournament, but that didn't happen. So, moving on, as I said, Nick Seeler was out after some injuries this week, which not sure if he got in that fight on Sunday night or not, but he was battling like a biceps injury. Then he had the flu, so just some things kind of piled up for him. But sounds like he'll be back here this week. Those were really the only newsworthy things of the week. It was a very slow news week for the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah.
So we have to ad-lib with some other things. So I have another topic that I was just kind of thinking about this week, and I messaged you. I'm like, I'm just going to complain about this. And
yeah, yep, have at it.
That is Charlie Coyle. He has been not good, to say the least. He's at, 31 points? 32 points on the season. And
31.
And he was at, 57 last year? His production is down, even just from, a points per game, because he missed time with injury early on in the season. Points per game is down. And this guy is not like a possession driver like Niederreiter or Granlund is. So when he's not producing, like he's not doing much of anything. He's also not a defensive superstar like Coyle is. So when Coyle's not putting up points, like he's still making an impact in the defensive zone. And I still don't know what to do with Charlie Coyle at this point because, I mean, it feels like he's only getting empty net goals right now. Like, I want to say his last goal was an empty net goal, too, and everyone's like, oh, this will be the goal that finally gets him going, and then he didn't. Yeah, he had 56 points last year, which was a career high, and it looked like he was going to be a big player in Bruce Boudreau's system, and that has not been the case this year. And, from an analytics standpoint, his points per 60 isn't terrible. It's like, what is it, 184, 187, which is like 5th or 6th on the team.
Yeah.
But, his possession numbers are not good, and I don't know. It feels like when you go into the offseason, they'll look to move Coyle and it'll feel like they'll kind of be selling low on him. But I don't know. At this point, unless he starts lighting it up horribly, I'm fine with selling low on him.
Well, what they could do is they could trade him to Montreal for Max Pacioretty.
Oh, I'm not sure I'd wish that on my own worst enemy.
Yeah, I don't know what to think. I think the biggest disappointing thing with Coyle is that, his production this year, yes, but also that you expected him to take some kind of step forward at some point. Like last year, he was good at times, but there was also times where he would disappear as well. He was a very streaky scorer. And we were just kind of waiting for him to gain some consistency, and therefore he would score more. Like he would be at that consistent 60 to 70 point guy, who you could rely on. And this year he's been even worse so. Like he's had dry spells that have gone on for games upon games upon games. And it's super frustrating, especially knowing the talent that he has and knowing that, he is a trade piece that would have garnered a lot in the last offseason and could have apparently gotten them Pacioretty at the deadline. It's super frustrating to see him not produce. If he's a playoff hero, maybe all will be forgiven, but you still want to see a step forward from him sometime, anytime.
And that's the other thing is, man, he's just not done much in the playoffs. I mean, he's got 39 games of playoff experience, and he just has 7 goals and 8 assists. It's not much. That's not a whole lot, and I mean, you just think about playoff performers, and he's just never one that kind of pops into your head on this team, even though when you just keep getting bounced in the first round, it's not like you have many on your team, but it just, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. But,
kind of at the point, let's just move on, and if he can be part of a trade for something bigger and better, like you said, then maybe that's something worth doing in the off season.
And a change of scenery might do wonders for him too. I mean, it's not always as simple as he doesn't have enough talent around him here, or it's bad coaching, or whatever. Sometimes a player just needs change of scenery to do anything. I mean, it really changes a lot of things about how they behave and how they prepare and that kind of thing. So I don't know, maybe if he goes to another team, we see the Charlie Coyle that actually could have been.
I don't know if Montreal is going to be the right change of scenery for him.
Well, no, but I mean
not that it's really a good
back.
Change of scenery for anyone.
Right.
I mean, Charlie Coyle's already a guy who we know to beat himself up pretty good when he's in a slump, and just times that by about 50 in Montreal because the spotlight is pretty heavy on you there.
Plus that he's from Boston, so they're going to hate him.
Yeah, that too. They trade him for Boston. Trade him to Boston. They probably like that.
Yeah.
All right. So the other thing we had this week is in the spirit of the college basketball tournament, and obviously the college hockey tournaments that are going to get underway here soon. We have compiled a bracket ourselves, and it is going to be a favorite Wild player tournament, which you can vote on our Twitter at GATG Wild Podcast. We'll be doing those throughout the week. And Ben, you have compiled the brackets, is that correct?
Yep.
Would you like to reveal the brackets in a much quicker fashion than TBS likes to reveal the college hoops tournament?
Well, I figured, yeah. So I'll break down each matchup. We've got 4 play-in games and then obviously 8 first-round matchups, and we'll just kind of go over those briefly and kind of break down, the kind of season the guy is having and go from there if that sounds good.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right, so for the play-in game for the 16th seed, we have Tyler Ennis and Marcus Foligno, which is a very interesting matchup, seeing as how they are both acquired together and have been, I would assume, somewhat equally disappointing. But it's an interesting matchup. What do you think of Tyler Ennis versus Marcus Foligno?
Ooh, that's your grinder versus very unskilled type of player. So that's, I don't know, just thinking aloud, I feel like Foligno will have the edge because most fans still like that kind of grinder type guy that Foligno is, but Ennis could pull that out. But I would, if I were a betting man, I would put money on Foligno. Foligno, who has one more point than Ennis on the season as well.
I think that and Wild Twitter's favorite Texan, Misconduct, brought this up earlier this season, that Marcus Foligno looks very much like a Disney prince.
Yes.
I think that could play a pretty big role in this.
Yes, the Disney voting Wild fan crowd will be firmly in Marcus Foligno's ring.
Well, I think we can all appreciate a handsome gentleman once in a while.
That's why I love Henrik Lundqvist.
Exactly. So on to the number 15 matchup. We have the Swedish Meatballs, as I like to call them when they're a defensive pair. Jonas Brodin versus Gustav Olofsson. Winner takes all and goes back to Sweden with the prize. This is an interesting matchup because it's two guys that I think have played similarly this year, but the expectations of them are totally different, and that kind of affects how people see them.
The favorite, again, if I were a betting man, would probably be Jonas Brodin, just because he's been around for a while. But I don't know. I'd probably vote for Olofsson if I were a voting man in this.
Yeah, I think Olofsson will do well in this. I think you might be right about Brodin. I think Olofsson will do well because I think there's a lot of people that are pretty frustrated with Brodin.
I mean, Jonas Brodin is on pace to get a career high in points. No, he's not. That was last year.
I was going to say.
But I mean, he's not doing bad, and defensively, he's having a pretty good year, and him and Dumba have kind of figured their stuff out as a pair, and they've been actually really good. So I'm not overly disappointed with Brodin. I just think, for what you're paying him, and just to be a defensive specialist like that, man, you have to be really good night after night, and that's really been the case for the last couple of months. It was not the case earlier this season. So
yeah,
that's kind of where I'm at with Jonas Brodin.
Sure. That's fair. That'll be an interesting playing game. Playing game for the 14th seed will be Jules Eriksson Ek versus Daniel Winnick, which is, again, a fairly interesting matchup in that you have the young top prospect facing off against Deadline Dan himself, the journeyman that is Daniel Winnick. That despite not having quite the pedigree as he signed with the Wild, still has more points than Eriksson Ek. So it's an interesting matchup. I think I would probably lean. I think a lot of people are going to lean towards Eriksson Ek, but his point production maybe will keep him out of the running in this one.
I feel like there's a good buildup of fans out there who are frustrated with Eriksson Ek. So that would make me kind of wonder if Winnick might get some more votes and make this an interesting race. But yeah, I would favor Eriksson Ek, but the fact that Brock Besser was drafted well after him has kind of maybe lost his value with Wild fans, but
sure,
I think we forget he's only 21 and he kind of having a similar start to his career like Mikko Koivu did when he couldn't score forever his first full year here, and then look how he did. He did okay.
Yeah, he turned out to be a super hot fan favorite.
Yeah, you could say that.
All right, so then we've got the final play-in game for the 13th seed, and this is an all Minnesota affair. One Matt Cullen, the proud Moorhead Spud, versus the Elk River Elk, that is Nate Prosser.
Sounds like a good Section 7 hockey matchup because that's how big Section 7 and 8 are, where they encompass over half the state.
Right.
I think Matt Cullen will win that. I think he has been very loved, and his play recently has even made fans love him more. Nate Prosser, obviously, the lovable crash test dummy, but somebody will have to lose. So I think Matt Cullen will be victorious here because he's doing this at the age of 41.
Right. Yeah, I think Cullen will. I mean, Cullen has come around too. He didn't start off very hot with the Wild, and he wasn't producing a ton, and his possession numbers were pretty bad. But I think he's come around, and he's having a decent season. He's having the type of season that you would expect him to have with the Wild. And Prosser has been basically what you expect out of him as well. That's not something that resonates quite as much with fans as what Matt Cullen is doing. So,
yeah,
right. All right. So then going straight down, the first round matchup, we talked about the 16 seed between Ennis and Foligno. They will face off against the number 1 overall seed, Eric Staal.
Oof.
And so they, one of those Buffalo Sabres has a pretty steep hill to climb for their Cinderella story, as is typical of 16 seeds in any college tournament.
Yeah. No, Eric Staal will win in a walk. There's no other way to put it.
It really should happen, yeah. All right, so then moving down that bracket, the 8-9 matchup. I think this one is very interesting, kind of for a lot of reasons. We have the 8th seed of Devan Dubnyk facing off against the 9th seed in Mikko Koivu.
Oof.
And I think that one will be interesting because there's a lot of folks out there that will defend Koivu to the death. There's a lot of folks out there that will roast Koivu to the death. And I think that Dubnyk kind of has a similar vibe, not nearly as passionate on either side, but I think there's some critics of Dubnyk out there that will never quit. But I also think there's some folks out there that just kind of have an eternal love for goalies. We certainly know a handful of them.
You.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I'd say this is a pretty good, your basic pro fan going with Dubnyk, and then against the more knowledgeable Wild fan with Koivu, just because he's such a good defensive center, and he does contribute points every once in a while, but
sure,
fans just love it to look at what a player's being paid and then look at the points and just blindly assume, he's crap. Or it's just like looking at how much money a baseball player makes and going, right. Yeah, he's crap. He doesn't hit enough dingers. So I think this will be a pretty even matchup, and I'll give the edge to Dubnyk just because, like you said, everyone loves a goalie.
Yeah. And then moving down, we talked about the 13th seed, which will be Cullen or Prosser. They will go up against the good hockey boy himself, the 4th seed, Nino Niederreiter. So that should be an interesting matchup. I think that Nino, even though he's had a fairly disappointing season by almost all standards, I still think he has got to be a pretty heavy favorite here, as you would expect with the 4th seed.
Yeah, no, that's Niederreiter's to lose, and I just don't think I know anyone who doesn't like Nino Niederreiter.
Yeah,
well,
I think there's some that don't like him as much as we do.
Mike Yeo didn't like him.
That's a good point.
There you go. My bad.
Yep.
I corrected myself.
We found someone that didn't like Nino.
You know who else didn't like? You know who else Mike Yeo didn't like? Eric Coyle.
That's true. It's very true.
You want to know how many goals Eric Coyle has this year?
Oh, God.
24.
Oh, jeez. Well, then.
I mean, at this pace, he's going to have as many goals this year as he did in the last 2 seasons with Minnesota combined.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Sorry, I had to interject with Eric Coyle.
That's fine. All right, so then on down to the bottom side of this, left side of the bracket. I didn't do this on purpose when I told you I made these seedings just kind of off the top of my head, and they worked out very perfectly. This is one of them because, as you may know, there is always a number 12 seed that defeats a number 5 seed in the NCAA tournament every year, the basketball tournament. And this 5-12 matchup is very interesting for a multitude of reasons, even though we just got done roasting him. It is the 5th seed, Zach Parise, facing the 12th seed in Charlie Coyle, the big omelet himself.
Yeah, that cries upset city. Like, I think Coyle is just lovable for what he does off the ice with Jason Zucker. So I think that resonates with fans a little bit more than Zach Parise, who just kind of goes about his business when he's on the ice, and then he just goes into a cave off the ice.
Yeah, he seems like a nice enough guy.
No, that's just an upset waiting to happen. And I mean, if I had to vote, I'd vote the 12th seed Coyle. Zach Parise is one of us, so I don't rule that out.
Right.
So that'd be a pretty even matchup for a 5-12, but I mean, I'd vote Coyle. That's just me.
Yeah, I think the Parise hometown factor is really going to make this matchup more interesting than perhaps it should be.
Yeah, the JP angle that always gets the old crowd too.
Right. All right. So moving over to the other side of the bracket, we have the number 15 seed, which will be one of the Swedish meatballs, the Swedish defenseman, facing off against the number 2 overall seed, fellow that's having a fine season and also has a fine Minnesotan wife in Jason Zucker.
Good luck to the Swedes.
Yeah, that's going to be a mercy killing, more as much as any other matchup that we have. But
yeah, no, it's Jason Zucker is pretty well loved, and he's on pace for 30 goals this year. And then like I said with Coyle, he's a pretty lovable guy off the ice and does a lot of good charity work, and he definitely hits the sports rube angle of local radio, so he's going to win in a landslide.
Yeah. Now, this next matchup here, I think is very interesting because there's some definite contingents at play. You have the heavy analytics contingent represented by the 7th seed in Jared Spurgeon, who might be a little underseeded, but it is what it is. Going up against the number 10 seed, the representative of the outstate / Duluth contingent, Alex Staal.
Oof, that's a good matchup. That's a good 7-10 matchup.
Yep.
I think, with all respect to Staal, that I think a good contingent of Wild fans have picked up that Jared Spurgeon is very good. So
yes.
I think he'll win decisively, and Alex Stalock's last couple starts haven't exactly helped his cause here, even though he does have the Duluth angle working for him. But, yeah, I think Spurgeon's a good lock here.
I think what's going to hurt Alex Stalock is his association with Paul Allen.
No. That's definitely accurate.
That and Panda Pete and Gretchen can only do so much ballot stuffing.
Yeah, they only have one vote unless they have many burner accounts.
Well, we know Pete has a couple.
Yeah, that's true.
Twins and Losses podcast will definitely be voting for Alex Stalock.
True.
All right, so on to the bottom quarter here. Jules Eriksson versus Daniel Winnick, one of them going to compete as the 14th seed in a likely mercy killing against the number 3 seed of Mikael Granlund.
Yeah, there's no upset happening there. Usually, the last couple college hoops tournaments, you've kind of seen a 14th seed take down a 3 seed, but that's not going to be the case here.
Yeah, I don't know that they can make it interesting. I think of all the play-in ones, maybe Cullen and Niederreiter could be interesting. One of us, but that otherwise the other play-in games, I mean, those guys don't really stand a hell of a chance.
Yeah, I think if you did this poll 2 years ago, anyone going up against Granlund would have a fair chance because everyone was kind of done with Granlund at that point, but he's really upped his stock here in the last couple of years, and he'll win in a walk.
Right. And then finally, for the first round here, we have what I think is maybe the most compelling matchup. Even though it's a 6 seed versus an 11 seed, it is very much closer than that. It really looks more like an 8-9 kind of thing. We have the number 6 seed in Matt Dumba, who has a very loyal following and a very loyal pitchfork mob as well, up against a guy in the number 11 seed in Ryan Suter, who has, I wouldn't say he has a loyal following. I think he has some ardent defenders, but also has a very considerable pitchfork mob to his name as well.
Yes. That's a good matchup.
That one might be, that one is there's going to be some names called over that one.
There's the Giles and the Goalie podcast Twitter mentions are going to be lit for that poll.
Very true.
As you said, there's some ardent defenders of either of those players, and then there are some definite haters of both players. So you're going to get some good debate when that matchup comes to light.
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. So all the play-in games will occur on Monday, so check out the GATG Wild podcast account on Monday for the play-in games. Then we're going to reel off, looks like, I think 2 polls a day. I'm going to throw them up in the morning, and then people will have all 24 hours to vote on said polls. And we're going to crank out this first round this week. We'll come back at you with a little bit of an update next week on the second round matchups, which will happen the following week. So it'll kind of follow the same flow as the NCAA tournament, just kind of, progress on down the line that. So it should be pretty exciting. Looking forward to it. Should be a lot of fun. Just kind of see where the chips fall.
Yeah. Yep. Joining us now on the podcast is Nick Seeler, who has a bone to pick with the selection committee. I'm just kidding.
Nick Seeler, you just got here and you got hurt right away. So you were a bubble team that didn't make it.
Yeah. No, look for that on our Twitter this week, and should be some fun before the college hoops tournament really kicks in, and obviously the college hockey tournament, which will start in a couple weeks here. So should be pretty fun. So yeah. Do check that out. Like we said, there's a lot of compelling matchups, so I'm quite curious to see how this is going to play out, especially this first round. So, looking ahead to the Minnesota Wild schedule here in the upcoming week, they return home ever so briefly on Tuesday night for a 1-game homestand as they play host to the Colorado Avalanche. In a playoff position, Colorado Avalanche. A 7:30 start, which is kind of odd, but a 7:30 start on Tuesday night at XL Energy Center. And, it's been well documented how the Wild have struggled against fast teams like the Avalanche this year, and I'm really curious to see how the Wild are going to do at home against the Avs. I think they beat them on, I want to say it was Black Friday at home, but then the 2 road games at Pepsi Center have just been utter disasters.
Yeah.
So that'll be a really, really curious game, and then the Wild get a couple nights off, and whether it's a good or a bad thing, they have a couple nights off preceding a Friday night game in Las Vegas. Remains to be seen, but that is what we have as the Wild make their only trip of the year, their first ever trip to T-Mobile Arena to play Eric Holla, Alex Tuck, and the Pacific Division leading Golden Knights. 9:30 Central start Friday evening. So if you are an early riser, put on some coffee because you will need it to stay up for that one. Then rounding out the week, the Wild next night, Saturday night, at Arizona, 8 p.m. start. Wild were just out in Arizona last weekend, March 1st, and they lost 5-3, as we remember. So this is a really curious week because, like I said, you have Colorado at home, and there's no guarantee the Wild are going to win that, even though they're a really good home team. And then you go out to Vegas, Vegas isn't necessarily playing well right now, to be honest. But their home record is incredible because everyone is suffering Vegas flu when they are out there. Poor John Tortorella just told his guys, "Hey, I don't care what you do," and then that backfired on him. And Lou Lamoriello tried to jet his players out to the game the day of, and that didn't exactly work well either. So nothing is exactly working for anyone in the NHL. But Vegas has only won 5 of their last 10 games. They're kind of coming back down to earth, but they've built up such a cushion in the Pacific that they're going to win it handily. So, and then Arizona, the Wild lost to them last weekend, and they starting to have this thing where they kind of play down to these bottom feeders in the West, but if you get in the playoffs, it doesn't really matter. So it'll be a curious week. So that's kind of what you can look forward to. So
it'll be super interesting to see how they react to it because they're the only team that hasn't lost to Vegas yet. Literally every other team has lost to Vegas at some point. So to see how they play, how they match up against Vegas in Vegas will be very interesting to see if they're overtaken by said Vegas flu. Because they kind of made quick work of them both times at XL Energy Center. So interesting to see if Vegas struggling right now, if that is enough of what the Wild need to take them on, because that is still a very possible first round matchup as well. So that's something to keep in mind as well. The Wild are holding on to 3rd place right now, but the teams behind them have a game in hand, and they can very well slip to that first wild card spot and end up in Vegas, much to the chagrin of Michael Russo, I'm sure. But it's still very interesting. Very sad that I am not going to be there. I really would have loved to be in Vegas, but seeing as how it's the NCAA tournament, it was very expensive and difficult to pull off with my work schedule. But for tips on visiting Vegas, for you lucky bastards that are going there this weekend, I did a mailbag article last week where I talked a little bit about some dining options, and maybe I'll follow it up with another one this week. We'll see.
Yeah, you can find that on zonecoverage.com.
Yes.
All right. On to the Bruce Boudreau quote of the week.
Hi, this is Bruce Boudreau. I don't see how in Toronto that they're calling it, unless it's a guy they just pulled in off the street that hasn't seen hockey before. If I were the fans, I'd be booing even more because they pay good money for this.
If you want it, don't just think you want it. Go out and f***ing want it.
Bruce Boudreau quote of the week. This one came after the Wild win Tuesday against Carolina, which Staal had a couple of goals, and again just really bumping up his stats, and he's on pace to break some Wild single season point and goals records.
Mm-hmm.
And after the game, Boudreau was obviously asked about Eric Staal again, and he says, and I quote, "Everything he touches, start calling him Midas. Everything turns to gold."
That's not bad. That's decent. I'm not giving that one an A+, but it's at least fitting.
It's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lighter week for Boudreau quotes, but that was probably the one that stood out above the others. So
that's not bad. Certainly more entertaining than anything Mike Yule would have ever given us.
Yeah, he would just say, "I don't want to get into that." It's just weird. Like, every week I kind of sit and I start thinking about topics I want to talk about on the podcast, and Eric Staal is just always a topic, again, that's up there, and it's just, you got to find new things to talk about to keep content fresh. Sorry, hashtag content fresh. So we try to not gush over Eric Staal every podcast, but, man, he's just so good.
Yeah, it's hard not to. It really is.
Did you see that After Hours bit he did on Sportsnet or segment?
No, I didn't.
Last night. I mean, it wasn't a bit. It was just like a 15-minute segment where they just basically asked him a bunch of questions, and it wasn't anything overly insightful. Like, they showed a clip from his Becoming Wild, and asking him about a bunch of stuff, and it was good and all. It just, he wasn't looking into the camera or really at either of the hosts, so he was just kind of staring off into space. So above anything, like, Eric Staal just staring off into space was just bothersome altogether. And then you have, like, the Wild PR account tweeting out a picture of him doing this interview, and that picture looked like he wanted nothing to do with that at all, which, yeah, I wouldn't want to sit in Roger's place any longer than I had to. Yeah, that is fascinating, so you can find that on the internet somewhere. But yeah, That's the Bruce Boudreau quote of the week. And on to the weekly wager.
That's your bet, sir.
Ah, yes, the bet.
Okay, what the hell?
It makes very little sense to bet when you cannot win.
Well, once again, I was defeated in the weekly wager contest. The much, much better dressed Hermantown Hawks were defeated in the semifinals of the Class A Minnesota High School League Hockey Tournament by Alexandria, and thus giving Ben the victory, because he had the field. Serves me right, because on Wednesday, I think Matamidi was trailing like 3-0 in their quarterfinal game, and I tweeted at you, "Field not looking good." Because
hubris, man.
Because I pretty much said, like, last week that, like, Matamidi was going to be your best hope to beat Hermantown, and neither of them made the final.
Right. Yeah, well.
Don't listen to me for insightful high school hockey takes.
No, you're not a high school hockey writer.
No.
You're a high school hockey blogger. Someday, I hope to graduate from that blogger word, but not today. At least you're king blogger.
Yeah, I got that going for me. I can put that on my card.
It's good to be. Yeah, it's good to be on top.
Yeah, king blogger. I was also bumped by Russo for a radio spot. So
yeah,
nobody wants king blogger. They want Russo.
Yeah,
Go figure.
From the radio, like, so they book you to do a brief radio interview, as both of us have done a few times. But then did they go out and get Russo after that, or like were they just waiting for him to answer?
I took it as
you just in case.
Yeah, I took it as he wasn't answering, and then finally he was like, "Hey, I can pre-record this at whatever time," and they're like, "Perfect." So then they did, and they didn't need me for the spot anymore. And
there's worse things to be than Russo's backup.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do much worse for yourself than that.
As you said, we are all Russo's backup.
We all are Russo's backup, yeah.
So, yeah. What do we have to wager on this week? I still have to pay out the lost bet from last week when I do a recap. I'll do it on Tuesday. I'll wear my Avalanche jersey.
Well, I was hoping that we could do something NCAA tournament related, but I wanted to bet you surrounding the Iowa State basketball team, but it turns out they didn't make the NCAA tournament, Giles.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know much about the NCAA basketball tournament because once the Gophers kind of jumped off a cliff, I quit caring.
Right.
And, yeah, although my insider says Iowa State should be really good next year, so that's something to hopefully hang my hat on.
I feel like your insider is biased.
Yeah. Apparently all their players were hurt this year.
Sure.
That's what's being put into my earpiece here.
Well, that's better than what happened to the Gophers' best players, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like if we're not, NCAA tournament, it's kind of tough to pull off, especially because it's basketball. Do we want to bet on this Vegas hockey game?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, what side do you prefer on that?
Well,
because I could go either way with it, really.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not as confident in myself and my betting skills here after the last few weeks.
Sure.
I'm a little bit gun shy.
Okay.
So I'm the war inside my head on should I just take the safe bet or should I try to be bold again? Mm-hmm. You know what? I'm gonna be bold. I'm gonna take the Wild. I say they win. I say they win in Vegas Friday night, and then they let us down on Saturday night against Arizona. So
that's an incredibly possible situation. All right, so I will take the Vegas Golden Knights, seeing as how I am actually a Vegas Golden Knights fan now. I'm no longer a Wild fan. I'm a Vegas Golden Knights fan, so that works very well for me.
All right. So
for the wager, should we do Twitter, Abby, or name, or do we want to do beverages that we could pay off at some point? I still have yet to eat ketchup chips.
Yeah. I'd say yeah, let's just do a Twitter avatar for
sure.
I don't know, maybe not a week.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe like a couple days.
Sure.
I think next week we can maybe wager a beverage to help promote our upcoming event.
Good call.
Yeah, I'd say Twitter avatar for 2 days.
Okay. All right, that's fair.
So.
Yeah, a week is pretty brutal. Okay, so yeah, we'll go with that.
So, all right, there you go. And you are winning the season series. I think you're up 10-8 now. I can't remember what I put out from the account, but
it's pretty close.
And then, how are your Wolves doing? I've not paid attention, but
they're fine. They're fine. They're fine.
Are they hanging on?
They just signed a former MVP, so they're doing great.
Oh wow, they beat the Warriors today.
Yeah, see, told you they were fine.
Wow. All right,
That is the Steph Curry less Warriors today, but you know what? They're still fine.
Oh, Steph Curry didn't play?
Yeah.
Oh, that's garbage. All right. Well, I guess I better get ready to eat some slaw.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, that's the season-long bet we have is the Wolves making the playoffs. So I will probably be eating some slaw here next month. So you can look forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
On 2 jerseys.
Here to start the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Well, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck. I've never seen this before.
Jersey of the week. Oh, brother. The Colorado Avalanche.
Yes.
What are you looking for from a third jersey here? Because they did a good thing in the summer. The switch from Reebok to Adidas, they dumped the Reebok Edge garbage in favor of their 90s look, which was probably one of the better moves we saw, period, from any team with this switch. But now as we look at a third jersey, Colorado has had a very less than stellar third jersey history. So I'm kind of curious what you think they're going to do here.
I don't know. I could see them using that third logo like they did for the Stadium Series.
The Rockies logo?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I would like to see them do something, I don't know, a little more interesting than that. Like, I didn't mind the diagonal Colorado, because I'm kind of a fan of that look in general.
Yep.
But I mean, maybe that would be overdone too. I don't know. I that's the way that I would lean. I actually didn't mind their third jerseys that they derived from the Stadium Series jerseys. They had some weird looks to them, but if they went with that, I wouldn't be upset. I think that was a decent enough jersey. If you just made some tweaks to it, it could look good.
Yeah, the kind of Colorado Rockies themed jersey.
Yeah.
That they had the last few years I thought it was a good look. Like, I'd make some tweaks to it, but wouldn't surprise me at all if they went back to it. I obviously hope they don't go back to the cotton candy blue jerseys from like the 2010s.
Yeah.
Which were hideous. But I'm also surprised they never used that foot logo in any other way. But that's not to say that that's a good look.
Shoulder pad.
But yeah.
But that was about it.
Tribute to their fans, the foot. Yeah, I don't know. Wouldn't surprise me to see that Rockies logo used again, and maybe some tweaks to the uniform. So that's kind of what I expect. And yeah, that I can probably do it for us. I think we killed a good hour here, and we can probably cut it there.
Sure. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff this week. I'm really excited about this tournament we'll have going on, and keep your eyes open for all sorts of tournament themed things this week. We'll see if we can have some fun with it.
Yeah. So do check that out on our podcast Twitter at GATGWild Podcast, and you may find another bracket in the near future from Ben on zonecoverage.com.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's where you can find us. You can also find us on Twitter at Ben Remington, at Giles Farrell. And again, check us out, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, iHeart Radio. We're now on Spotify. We are really hitting all the places. So plenty of spots for you to listen to us. And yeah, that will wrap it up for this show, and we will catch you again next week.
Later.
It's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.